All right, y'all, NBA free agency has kicked off with a bunch of interesting signings. A lot of people kind of staying put that I didn't expect to. You think about Gary Harris, Chris Boucher, Mo Bamba. All staying put. Didn't see that coming. Kind of boring. But really, what has derailed the whole talk of the NBA is, of course, Kevin Durant formally requesting a trade from the Brooklyn Nets. And just after Kyrie Irving opted into his player option, Kevin Durant is packing his bags and wanting to go elsewhere. And this is kind of unprecedented territory in terms of a player of his caliber demanding a trade with this many years left on his deal and with his, generational talent. What kind of package will the Nets get in return for Kevin Durant? And, a lot of things have been thrown out there. Obviously, Phoenix and Miami are the, kind of front runners here. You look at Phoenix with Ayton, his Bridges included. Now the Nets are asking for Devin Booker. I've seen reports about them asking for 2 All-Stars in a deal. Obviously, keeping the price very high, as they should. And what, they'll ultimately get will, obviously remains to be seen. In my opinion, I do not love the idea of trading for Kevin Durant. If I'm Phoenix, if I'm Miami, generally because of how, the Nets have that kind of leverage to be like, oh, well, you want our guy, we'll take you for all you have. And at that point, you're not really competing for a championship if you're Phoenix, if you swap Booker for Durant. Obviously, he's, maybe an upgrade for a few years, but I'm not sure that kind of jumps everyone else in the Western Conference for Phoenix, and they're now the front runner to win the finals. So there's kind of a fine line here now where teams have to be careful not to give up literally everything for this guy and end up with, pretty much nothing. And what the Nets are asking for doesn't seem realistic in those terms, and they're making it pretty much impossible, at least out the gate, to make that trade happen. And the thing is, because he's on a long-term deal, there's no rush for the Nets to trade him even this offseason. I mean, if he wants to sit out, he can sit out. If, they don't have the right deal right now, then they don't have any incentive to necessarily trade him. Now, obviously, they traded their picks to Houston, so maybe they're not in kind of a rebuild mode and they're looking for, it seems as if they're looking for kind of a win-now package in return. And there really are not that many teams that I think would be willing to even have that kind of package and then would be willing to part with it. I mean, the teams that have 2 All-Stars are not going to give both of them up just for a Kevin Durant-led team with a bunch of role players. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It makes sense for the Nets to ask for it. It doesn't make sense for any team that has it to give that up. So at some point, there's going to be a middle ground. Now, Brooklyn can obviously try and restore some of their picks with this deal. If you look at, a Portland could offer you like, hey, here's your rebuild right here. Here's, Shaedon Sharpe. Here's Anthony Simons, and kind of go from there. And it's like, all right, well, we have 2 kind of top young guys, and they can throw in some picks. And you're like, all right, we have somewhat of a rebuild. You could do the same thing with Ayton and Bridges. Obviously, if they want Booker, maybe that's not up to them. But I think you would have to be excited in Brooklyn if you get Ayton, Bridges, some picks, maybe Cam Johnson, maybe Landry Shamet. I mean, that's pretty legitimate package when you look at a starting 5 of, if whatever happens with Ben Simmons. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But if you put in Simmons, you put in Bridges and Ayton, that's a pretty legitimate defensive trio right there. Would not hate that. Obviously, the Suns now, you've maintained the big 3 of Paul, Booker, and Durant, but who else is going to get it done for you would be a huge question mark going into the season. But it makes sense as Phoenix, especially with that Chris Paul window dwindling, if not already shut, in terms of trying to make, a last playoff push. Now, Dame is obviously a little further back than Chris Paul, so, Portland's trying to maximize that window. I could see them having, a huge incentive to try and acquire Durant. But as we kind of explore this, and Miami, obviously he might want to go there, doesn't make a lot of sense. Don't think they have the assets to compete. But I think it opens up the question in general of, like, do you really actually want to give up a historic package for Kevin Durant? And to me, the answer is no, and a pretty clear no. I mean, the guy's in his mid-30s. He's already had a lengthy injury history, hasn't played a full season, it seems like, in forever. And given the talent, yes, I understand. But when we're talking about, a package to level what Anthony Davis, in terms of all the draft capital, and then you throw in Ingram and Hard and Lonzo, I mean, I don't think there's topping that, and I don't think you should. I don't think Kevin Durant is in the same place in his career as Anthony Davis was. Now, could he have the same impact? Absolutely. Could a KD trade, win you a finals? I think absolutely. But you're really rolling the dice in trying to, hope that this guy stays healthy, hope that he actually still wants to be there, because, off the court, obviously a guy who's never been happy in one spot for very long. I mean, are we even sure he'll end this contract at the place he gets traded to this offseason? I think you can't say with any certainty that he will. So if it's me, I would stay away from Kevin Durant. I understand the talent, I understand the scoring ability and what he gives you, but the injury history takes him off. And then once you lose Kevin Durant, you just lost the trade package you gave for Kevin Durant, and you lost Kevin Durant. And where does that leave you? It leaves you where Milwaukee was without Chris Middleton. And I think, depth is a very underrated part of NBA basketball. Everyone's trying to get those 3 stars. For the past couple years, you've only needed 2, but everyone's looking for 3. But without any depth, without any competent players outside of them, very difficult still to win a championship. And I think that's kind of my whole argument here is like, yeah, we're excited, Kevin Durant may be available and on the market, but let's be careful about how we categorize him in terms of how we see him at this point in his career, and really think through how much we're going to be willing to give up just to get him. Because I don't think this is a blank check scenario where you're like, I don't care what it takes, just give me Kevin Durant. He's not that guy who can single-handedly, win a playoff series. We already saw that where they got swept by Boston. And, Kevin Durant wasn't great in that series, and you can't expect him to be able to carry your team anymore. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on the Kevin Durant excitement here. Let's really think this through. Think about what kind of value we're giving up for him. And then, we'll go from there. And feel free to disagree if you think Kevin Durant's the greatest man alive and blah, blah, blah. Please make the argument. Obviously, he's got a crazy pedigree, one of the best scorers of all time. But do you trust him enough for your team, both personality-wise and basketball-wise? Love to hear what you have to say. And for now, take it easy, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.